The call dropped just as the station kitchen television showed the pre-game lineup. Will Harlow had been half-suited, bunker pants on, suspenders hanging, coffee cooling beside him. His son, Ryan, stood on the screen for a second, helmet under his arm, that nervous smile he always got before kickoff. Will felt that little twist in his chest, the one he'd been trying to ignore all week. He'd swapped shifts, pulled favors, and still ended up here, stuck in the gray concrete of Station 12 instead of in the aluminum bleachers where he'd promised he'd be. The tones hit, sharp and flat. Engine 12, Rescue 12. Respond to a vehicle accident, unknown injuries, Route 6 near mile marker 14. Caller reports rollover. The room shifted instantly, chairs scraped back, boots thudded. Conversation died off like a switch had been thrown. Will didn't even look at the TV again. He hauled up his suspenders, grabbed his coat, and followed his crew through the apparatus bay, where the diesel exhaust hung low and cold. Out on the street, the late afternoon light had that fall edge to it, clean, bright, and already cooling off. The engine rolled out with its usual growl, rescue right behind them. Will settled into the officer's seat, pulling the headset on, watching the neighborhood blur into long stripes of color. His mind, though, was stuck back at the station, replaying his son's face on that screen. The dispatcher's voice crackled through. Update from caller. Vehicle is a red pickup, off the roadway. Occupant possibly trapped. Will repeated it automatically, but the words punched a little harder than they should have. Red pickup. Plenty of those around town, but something about the detail tugged at him. Driver trapped usually meant a hard hit, maybe a rollover into a ditch or a tree. That stretch of Route 6 was narrow, uneven, the kind of road that lured teenagers with empty space and no streetlights. He'd run calls out there for 2 decades. Deer strikes, drunk drivers, farm trucks laid over in the tall grass. Nothing surprised him anymore, but calls involving kids always settled in his stomach like a bad meal. Traffic thinned as they got farther from town. The siren bounced off the farm silos and fence lines, echoing into open fields. Will scanned ahead, searching for that flicker of hazard lights or the shine of metal where it didn't belong. He saw it before anyone else on the engine did. A shape down in the ditch, a flash of red, crumpled in a way that made his chest go tight. Got the vehicle, he said into the headset. Right side, 10 o'clock. Engine 12 braked hard and angled toward the shoulder. Dust kicked up around them as the wheels rolled onto gravel. The scene came into focus clearer now. Pickup on its roof, front end smashed against a drainage culvert. Passenger door twisted open like it had been peeled back. Will stepped out fast, turnout coat still unlatched. The air hit him with that mix of burnt rubber, radiator fluid, and the dry smell of weeds crushed under metal. He jogged down the slope with McConnell from rescue close behind. Then he saw the decal on the tailgate. A white number 27, a school sticker from last season's playoffs. He felt his stomach drop. There were maybe 4 red pickups in town with that exact decal, all belonging to kids on the team, and one of those kids had practically lived at Will's house since grade school. Tyler Reese. Loud, lanky, always hungry, always trailing behind Ryan. Will didn't say anything at first. He forced himself to move. Gloves on, crouching beside the shattered driver's window, calling out over the hiss of a busted radiator line. Fire department, if you can hear me, talk to me. No answer. He leaned in farther, careful of the glass, trying to get a look inside. The cab was crushed down near the windshield, roof bent like someone had stomped on it. There was movement, barely, a shoulder shifting, a breath. McConnell slid up beside him. Anyone responsive? Maybe, Will said. Let's pop the rest of this door. More sirens approached as rescue set up their tools. The hydraulic cutter whined to life, its pitch slicing through the quiet fields. Will steadied the mangled door frame, jaw tight, heart hammering in a way he didn't like. When the door finally broke free and swung aside, Will leaned in again and froze. The face was smudged with blood and dirt. The hair was too familiar. The sweatshirt, torn and dust-coated, still showed the faded logo of the high school team. It was Tyler. Will swallowed hard, that cold, heavy feeling spreading across his ribs. He kept his voice steady because he had to. Tyler, hey bud, it's Will, we've got you. The kid's eyes fluttered, unfocused, scared. He tried to speak but only managed a strained breath. Behind them, gravel crunched as more units arrived. Command was being established. Extrication tools were being unloaded. Radio transmissions overlapped in short, clipped bursts, but inside the crumpled cab, it felt strangely quiet. Will reached in, bracing Tyler's head with both hands to keep his spine aligned. The kid's breathing was shallow and fast. Every instinct in Will screamed to hurry, but rushing meant mistakes, and mistakes meant they didn't get Tyler out alive. He kept his voice low, steady. "You're all right, we're here, don't move your head, just breathe." Tyler blinked weakly, his gaze trying to focus on Will's face. And in the fading daylight, in that cold ditch where time felt slowed to a crawl, Will realized he'd missed his son's game for a call that was about to break something deep inside him. Engine lights threw long red streaks across the ditch as rescue's crew set up the spreaders. The air compressor thumped in a steady rhythm, the kind of background noise firefighters learned to work inside without thinking. Will stayed where he was, hands locked around Tyler's head, keeping his spine straight. His knees were sinking into the softened dirt, but he didn't shift. Not an inch. McConnell crouched beside him. "Dash is pushed in. Steering column too. We're gonna need a full lift." Will nodded. "Just keep it smooth, he's breathing shallow." "Copy." Rescue 12's captain, Morales, leaned over the crushed doorframe. "Will, you good to maintain C-spine?" "I've got him," Will said, even though his shoulders were already burning. Someone above them yelled for cribbing. Someone else called out a chainsaw request to clear branches on the passenger side. Conversations snapped short and mechanical. Will kept his voice low, separate from the noise. "Tyler, listen to me. You're staying right here with us. We're gonna get you out. You just keep breathing, okay?" Tyler's eyelids twitched. A faint sound slipped from him, more a whimper than a word. His right leg was twisted under the dash, pinned tight. His left arm was wedged between the crushed seat and the door panel, blood tracing down his wrist in slow lines. Morales tapped Will's shoulder. "We're making first cuts on the A-post." "Go," Will said. Metal screamed as the cutter bit in. The whole truck shuddered. Tyler's breath caught and Will tightened his hands gently around his head. "I know," he murmured. "I know it hurts. Just hold on." The sound of metal tearing always hit a nerve, no matter how many years on the job. It was mechanical and violent and final, but it meant progress. It meant they were taking the truck apart piece by piece until a kid could breathe easier. Morales called out the next cut angle. McConnell switched tools. The second bite of the cutter sent a shower of bright sparks onto the grass. The roof shifted enough that daylight slipped in through a new gap. One of the paramedics, Benson, slid in from the passenger side, laying down flat to reach Tyler's chest with a stethoscope. Breath sounds shallow on the left. "He's shocky, let's get him out fast." Will felt a sting of cold settle under his ribs. He'd seen shock in kids before. Sports injuries, ATV crashes, farm accidents, and it always looked wrong. Wrong on their faces, wrong in the way their bodies went still even when they were scared. "Tyler," he said again, leaning closer. "You hear any of the game? Ryan was starting today." The boy's eyes fluttered. It was faint, but it was something, a flicker of recognition. Benson adjusted an oxygen mask near Will's shoulder. "As soon as we get space, push it on." Will nodded, though he didn't know if Tyler could take another second of pressure from the shifting metal around him. The next tool whined, spreaders this time, forcing the dashboard upward. The truck groaned like an old ship, metal flexing in joints that weren't meant to move. Will felt the vibration run up his arms. Morales yelled over the noise. "We need 1 more inch." McConnell responded, "Pushing." The dashboard lifted, just enough. Tyler's pinned leg loosened from the crushed floorboard. Benson slid in farther, checking the pulse at his ankle. "He's got one. Weak, but present." Will exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Okay," Morales shouted. "Roof comes off next. Get ready to slide him straight back." The saw fired up, roaring against the quiet fields. Its blade carved through the roof in quick, practiced passes. The smell of hot metal mixed with radiator steam, and the dry weeds clinging to the undercarriage. Through all of it, Will didn't move. Every shift in the wreck sent little jolts into Tyler's body, and Will countered them with gentle pressure, steady hands, a quiet voice. "You're doing good, kid. Real good." The roof finally came free, lifted away by 2 sets of gloved hands. Fresh air poured into the crushed cab. Tyler's breathing eased for the first time. Morales dropped beside Will. "We're pulling on my count. You hold until he's clear. Ready?" Will swallowed hard. "Ready. 1, 2, 3. Benson guided Tyler's shoulders while McConnell supported his legs. Will kept his hands at Tyler's head until the kid's body slid far enough onto the backboard that another pair of hands took over. The moment Will let go, he felt the weight come off him in a way that made his arms shake. They carried Tyler up the slope toward the ambulance, Benson calling out vitals as they moved. The kid's face was pale, too pale. His breathing stuttered. The paramedics worked fast, oxygen mask on, IV line started, chest exposed for another assessment. Will climbed the incline behind them, slower than he expected, like someone had filled his boots with water. He reached the top of the ditch just as Benson shut the ambulance doors. Morales stepped beside him. "We got him out clean. Medics think he's got a fighting chance." Will nodded, staring at the ambulance taillights glowing in the dimming light. He didn't say anything, didn't trust himself to. Another engine rolled onto the scene for cleanup. Radio chatter carried across the field. Someone asked if Will was heading back on engine 12. He didn't answer, because in the distance, over the wind and engine noise, he could hear faint cheers drifting from town, the last quarter of the game he'd promised not to miss. Will rode back in silence, sitting in the jump seat instead of the officer's seat. McConnell kept glancing his way, but he didn't say anything. Nobody on the crew did. They all knew that look, the one where a firefighter hadn't fully come back from the call yet. The engine rolled through the edge of town, passing the high school stadium. The game lights still burned bright against the dark sky, throwing long beams across the emptying parking lot. They were late enough that most of the crowd had already started to spill out through the gates. People were bundled in jackets, carrying foam fingers, shaking off cold air. Some were laughing, some were tired. All were walking away from a night they'd be talking about at work the next day. Will watched from behind the glass, feeling like he was seeing a world he used to belong to from the outside. Engine 12 backed into the bay. The garage door rattled closed behind them. The crew moved with that automatic end-of-call pace. Tools put back, compartments checked, straps straightened. Will stepped down onto the smooth concrete floor, and the smell of the station, diesel, soap, old coffee, hit him in a way that twisted something deep inside. Morales appeared at his side. "You good?" "Yeah," Will said. Too quick. Morales didn't press. He just nodded, wiped his gloves clean, and walked toward the turnout racks. Will peeled off his coat, hands stiff, mind still back in that ditch. He kept replaying the moment Tyler's eyes found his, that scared, shaking breath, the kind of look kids gave when they realized they weren't invincible, not even close. It hit harder because he knew that kid, not as a patient, not as a name on a report, as the boy who'd eaten more of Will's cereal than Ryan ever had. There was a TV on in the kitchen, volume low. Highlights from the game played across the screen. Will stepped in without fully meaning to, drawn by instinct. The camera showed Ryan, helmet off, cheeks red from the cold, jaw tight in a way that reminded Will of himself when he was young and frustrated. A caption scrolled, "Home team advances to finals." The room was empty. Most of the guys were still finishing cleanup. The cutlery clinked faintly in the dishwasher. Will stood there, watching his son through a screen like some kind of stranger. The reporter shoved a mic forward. "Ryan, big win tonight. Your first playoff start. How'd it feel out there?" Ryan wiped his face with the back of his glove. He tried to smile. It didn't land. "Good," he said. "Just good." The kid's eyes flicked away from the camera for a second. He looked like he was searching the stands for someone who wasn't there. Will felt the hit like a gut punch. He reached for a chair but didn't sit. His hands braced against the back of it, knuckles white. The door to the bay opened and McConnell stepped in, still adjusting his duty shirt. "Hey," Reese's mom called the station. Medics radioed ahead. They said he made it to the trauma center in stable condition. "Scary, but he's hanging on." Will swallowed. "Thanks." "That kid's tough," McConnell said. "He'll fight." Will nodded again, but it didn't soften the ache that had settled behind his ribs. When McConnell left, Will stayed there in the quiet kitchen, staring at the muted TV. After a minute, he pulled out his phone. A dozen missed texts. From his wife, from other parents. One from Ryan. He opened it. "It's fine, Dad. I get it. Just wish you were here. No anger. Just tired disappointment." That was somehow worse. Will locked the phone and shoved it into his pocket. He rubbed his face with both hands, feeling the grit from the call still stuck to his skin. The station felt colder than it usually did. Bigger, too. Empty in a way he hadn't noticed before. He walked back into the bay, moving on autopilot. He checked the tools on the engine even though he knew they were already squared away. He tightened straps that didn't need tightening. He wiped down surfaces that didn't need wiping. Anything to keep from thinking. But thoughts slipped in anyway. The sight of that red pickup crushed in the ditch. The number 27 decal half buried in weeds. Tyler whispering through broken breaths. And behind all that, like a quiet echo, the memory of Ryan's face on the stadium screen looking for him. When the station settled down for the night, Will finally forced himself to sit on the bench outside the apparatus bay. The air was cold enough to sting. He watched traffic pass on the highway. Headlights, taillights, people going home to families who were waiting, watching for them. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He'd spent years telling himself that missing things came with the job. Birthdays, games, anniversaries, recitals. Firefighters missed half their lives serving other people's lives. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, he felt the cost in full. He closed his eyes and exhaled slow. He needed to see his kid. He needed to see with his own eyes that Tyler was still fighting. He needed something, a direction, a start. His phone buzzed. Again, his wife. "Call me when you can." Ryan's still up. He wants to talk. Will stood, grabbed his jacket, and headed toward his truck parked out back. Tomorrow they'd debrief the call. Tomorrow there'd be paperwork, reports, cleanup. But tonight, he had one thing he needed to fix. The hospital parking lot was mostly empty by the time Will pulled in. The overhead lights cast everything in that washed-out yellow glow hospitals always had at night. He parked farther back than he needed to, letting the engine tick as it cooled, letting himself breathe before stepping into the bright, sterile quiet he knew was waiting inside. The automatic doors opened with that soft whoosh, warm air and disinfectant hitting him at the same time. Nurses moved behind the desk in calm lines, their voices low, steady. A security guard nodded at him. Will nodded back. "Trauma," he said quietly. The guard pointed down the main hallway. Will walked, boots thudding on smooth tile. A few families sat in waiting chairs, holding jackets close, eyes fixed on doors that hadn't opened yet. He recognized that posture. Hope held in place by exhaustion. Outside Trauma Room 3, he stopped. Tyler's mom stood there, arms crossed tight, shoulders shaking. Her husband had one hand on her back, trying to keep her grounded even though he looked ready to fall apart himself. Neither of them noticed Will at first. He cleared his throat gently. They turned. The look on their faces said everything. Relief, fear, gratitude, all mixed together in a way that made Will feel smaller than he'd felt in years. "Will," Tyler's mother whispered, stepping forward. "They said you were with him." He nodded. "Yeah, we got him out pretty fast." She wiped her nose. Did he say anything? Did he know what was happening? Will hesitated. Not because he wanted to hide anything, but because he wanted to choose the right words. "He knew we were there," he said. "He heard me, he stayed with us the whole time." That was the truth, and it was enough for her. She grabbed him in a hug that was tight and desperate. He held on, steady, the way firefighters learned to hold people who were trying not to break. "He's stable," her husband said. "Doctors say the leg might need surgery. Bruised lung, some fractures, but he's fighting." Will breathed for what felt like the first time since the ditch. "That kid's tough," he said softly. "He'll push through." After a moment, he stepped back to give them space. There wasn't anything more he could do here. They needed each other, not him. He walked down the hall, found a bench near the vending machines, and finally pulled out his phone. He stared at Ryan's message again. "Just wish you were here." Will rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the grit of dried sweat and dust from the call. He hit call. The phone rang twice. His son answered quietly, voice rough in that way teenagers get after hours of yelling on a field. "Dad?" Will closed his eyes. "Hey, bud." A long pause. Not angry, just tired. "Did you get my text?" Ryan asked. "Yeah," Will said. "I did." Another pause. The kind that had weight to it. "I scored," Ryan said. "First quarter." Will smiled. Small but real. "I know. I saw it on the replay." "You weren't there," Ryan said. Not accusing, just stating a fact that sat heavy between them. "I know," Will replied. "And I'm sorry, I'm really sorry." Ryan didn't say anything for a few seconds. Will could hear the faint hum of the TV in the background, maybe the sound of a sports commentator still recapping the game. "What happened?" Ryan finally asked. Will leaned back against the wall, letting the cool tile steady him. "Bad crash," he said. "A rollover out on Route 6. Anyone hurt?" "Yeah," Will said. "Someone you know." Another pause. Sharper this time. "Who?" "Tyler." Ryan's breath caught. "Is he?" "He's alive," Will answered quickly. "He's toughing it out in the trauma unit. He's got a long road ahead, but he's here, bud. He's here." Ryan exhaled shakily. "Is he gonna be okay?" Will hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "He's got a chance, and that's more than most kids get in something like that." Silence hung between them again. Not awkward, just full. "Dad?" Ryan said quietly. "Yeah, I'm not mad," the kid murmured. "I just didn't wish things were different." Will felt that in a deep place he didn't talk about. "Me too." A beat passed. "Can we talk more when you get home?" Ryan asked. "Not tonight. Tomorrow's fine. Just sometime when you're not on shift." "Yeah," Will said. "Yeah, of course. Okay, I'm gonna get some sleep. Good night, bud." "Night, Dad." The line went dead. Will lowered the phone and sat there for a long minute staring at the floor tiles. Every call changed you a little, but some dug in deeper, scraped against places you didn't know were raw. He pushed up from the bench and walked out of the hospital. The cold air hit him hard, clearing his head. His truck sat alone under the parking lot lights, and for once the quiet felt like something he needed. When he got in, he didn't start the engine right away. He just sat, hands on the steering wheel, breathing slow. Tomorrow he'd go home. Tomorrow he'd look his kid in the eye and say what he needed to say. And tomorrow the job would still be there, waiting, demanding, unpredictable as ever. But for the first time in a long while, he wasn't going to let it take the last pieces of him that mattered. Will got home just after sunrise, still wearing half of yesterday's shift on his face. His wife was already in the kitchen, robe tied tight, hair pulled back, trying to look calm even though she kept glancing at the clock. She didn't say anything at first. She just stepped toward him and wrapped her arms around his waist. He exhaled into her shoulder, letting the tension bleed out of him 1 inch at a time. "You talked to Ryan?" she asked. "Yeah," Will said. "Late last night." "Okay." She nodded softly, but she didn't let go right away. When she finally stepped back, her eyes checked him over like she was trying to read whether he was physically here or still somewhere on that road. "There's coffee," she said. "He's upstairs, he barely slept." Will looked up the staircase with a weight he couldn't hide. Every rough shift he'd ever worked, every fire, every wreck, every loss, felt lighter than this one moment. He climbed the stairs slowly, boots in hand. At the second to last step, he paused. Ryan's bedroom door was cracked open, morning light spilling across the hall carpet. He knocked once. "Yeah?" came the groggy voice. Will pushed the door open gently. Ryan was half sitting up, blankets tangled around him, hair all over the place. He looked older than he should have. That happened fast with kids who spent their lives waiting on someone else's schedule. "Hey, bud," Will said. Ryan just nodded. Not cold, not angry, just waiting. Will stepped inside and sat on the edge of the bed. The room smelled like sweat, turf pellets, and teenage laundry. Normal things, grounding things. "I'm sorry I missed it," Will said. "I know I said I'd be there. I meant it." Ryan picked at a loose thread on his blanket. "You had a call." "I know," Will said. "But it doesn't make it easier. Not for you, and not for me." He rubbed his hands together. "If I could have been in 2 places at once, bud, I would have." Ryan swallowed. His voice was quiet. "Was it bad?" "Yeah," Will said honestly. "It was. Mom said it was Tyler." "It was." Will kept his voice steady. "He's fighting. He's got a long road, but I think he's got a real chance." Ryan nodded slowly, eyes tight. "I should go see him." "You can," Will said, "when he's stable enough for visitors." Another quiet moment passed. Ryan finally looked up at him. "Do you ever get used to it?" he asked. "All the stuff you see?" Will shook his head. "No, you don't want to. Getting used to it means something broke in you a long time ago." He took a breath. "But you learn how to carry it without letting it crush everything else." Ryan studied him, the way kids do when they're trying to figure out how adults keep walking through things that should have knocked them down. "I didn't want you to miss my game," Ryan said, "but I didn't want Tyler to be alone either." Will felt that tight pull in his chest again. "He wasn't. I stayed with him the whole time." Ryan nodded, wiped his eyes, pretending it was sleep. "That's good." Will lifted a hand, paused. then rested it on Ryan's shoulder. "Listen, I can't promise I'll never miss another game, or another thing that matters to you. I wish I could. But I can promise you this. When I'm off shift, I'm yours. Full stop. And if something's important to you, you tell me. I'll move the world where I can." Ryan exhaled, shoulders loosening. "Okay. You scored?" Will asked, letting a small smile break through. Ryan cracked a smile of his own. "Yeah, broke 3 tackles too." Will grinned. "Your old man would have cried in the bleachers." "You cry at everything," Ryan said, but he was smiling for real now. Will chuckled. "Getting soft in my old age." They sat there quietly a moment longer before Ryan cleared his throat. "You hungry? Mom said she'd make French toast." "Yeah," Will said, standing slowly. "Let's go eat." They headed downstairs, the house warming up with the smell of coffee and cinnamon. It felt normal. It felt like something solid. Later that afternoon, after breakfast and after Ryan drifted off to catch up on sleep, Will stepped out onto the back deck with a cup of coffee. The sky was cold blue, the yard still wet with last night's dew. Birds moved along the fence line. The world kept going, quiet and steady. His phone buzzed. A text from McConnell. "Kid's stable, sedated but responding. Docs say he's lucky." Will stared at the message longer than he meant to. Lucky. The word never landed easy in this line of work. But today it felt right. He typed back a simple good and slid the phone into his pocket. He sat there for a while, holding the warm coffee between his hands, letting himself settle into the stillness. Calls like last night didn't fade. They stayed in the seams of your thoughts. But this one shifted something in him. He'd always known this job pulled him in 2 directions. But he'd never felt the strain quite as sharply as he did on that roadside, with one kid trapped and another waiting for him across town. Now he understood something he hadn't put words to before. Saving lives mattered, but so did being present for the ones who gave his life meaning. He stood, stretched his back, and took one last look at the quiet yard. Tomorrow the station would call again. Tomorrow, he'd answer. The sirens, the smoke, the wrecks, they'd always be part of him. But he wasn't going to let them take the rest. Not anymore.